Create a plane called ground. Create an empty named player. Add a camera to the player and set its Y position to 1.8. Add a character controller to the player and set center Y to 1. Add a new script called player movement. Remove the sample code. Add a public float called movement speed and a private character controller reference. Add an awake method and fetch the character controller. Add an update method. Add a private method called handle movement and call it in update. Create a vector3 variable called movement to store the horizontal and vertical input axes and make sure Y is set to 0. Transform the movement vector to world space. Multiply it by the movement speed variable. Call the move method on the character controller and pass in movement multiplied by delta time. You can now move the player. Create a public float called look sensitivity and a vector2 called look range. Add a private camera reference and fetch it in the awake method by calling getComponent in children. Add a new method called handle look. Store the mouse delta in a vector2 variable called delta. Multiply it by the look sensitivity. Rotate the transform around the up axis using delta x. Add a private float field called vertical look angle. Subtract it by the delta y component in the handle look method and clamp it using the look range field. Set the camera's Euler angle around the x-axis to the vertical look angle. Call the handle look method in update. Lock the cursor by changing the lock state. You can now look around. Add a public float called jump force, a keycode called jump key and a public float called ground check radius. Add a private vector3 called velocity and boolean called is grounded. Add a new private method called handle jumping. Check if the jump key is pressed and is grounded is true. Increment the y velocity by the jump force in that case and call the method in update. Check if we're grounded by calling physics check sphere and passing in the position and ground check radius. Add a public float called gravity scale. Create a new private method called handle gravity. Increment velocity y by the gravity scale multiplied by delta time. We reset velocity y if we're grounded and if velocity y is negative. Call the move method again and pass in velocity multiplied by delta time. Call handle gravity after handle movement in update. Feel free to like and subscribe if you found this tutorial helpful.